Well, howdy, partner, and welcome to the SAS Viya Release Highlight Show. I'm Thiago, coming at you from the great state of Texas for SAS Innovate 2026. This data and AI event of ours isn't just about experimentation or hype. It's about execution, trust, and measurable value. We'll talk about how SAS Viya is evolving from industry solutions and agentic systems to governance, AI evaluation, and what's on the horizon. So why don't we giddy on up and get started with where value shows up most clearly, in real workflows solving real problems. We'll talk to Sglavo, President of Applied AI and Modeling, about SAS models and industry agents. And Udo has returned to the show. Udo, thank you for being back.
No, thank you for having me. I'm excited to be here.
So last year, we talked about SAS models. What has changed since then? How has it evolved? And what is your team focusing on nowadays?
You see, the model stories has evolved into agentic AI. And that's actually a quite good fit. Because if you look at how we define agents and agentic AI, at least at SAS, it's a combination between large language models and what they call tools in the agent world. And those tools are actually our models. So it's a quite nice evolution from the model story to the agentic AI story.
So agents are a big focus. Today on main stage, you spoke about a lot of things, and particularly you demoed the supply chain agent. Can you tell me what's special about that one in particular?
Yeah, we're pretty fond of the supply chain agent because first of all, it was our first attempt to marry SAS analytics with a large language model. So behind the scenes, the supply chain agent is running optimization and forecasting capabilities, which we have been working on for a long time, as you know. And now we are marrying this in a way that people can chat with an agent, and the agent will do all the fantastic work for you. Now, the real cool story about this is, of course, the integration into Microsoft Teams, Microsoft Copilot. So there are no interfaces, right? The chat becomes the interface. So in a way, the agent behaves almost like a person in a discussion, which is so awesome.
So who is this all for? What industries can see the most value from all this?
Yeah, so typically the supply chain agent will be of interest to every industry who has to deal with supply chain challenges, right? Of course, the immediate candidates which come to mind are manufacturers, probably retailers, but also the pharma companies are very much interested in this. And I think that's something which we also discussed on stage today, that it's one thing to develop a new drug, but eventually you need to think about, well, how do I get it to the market, to the customer, to you and me? And that's a supply chain problem.
So what can we see in the future in terms of SAS models and agentic AI? What can we expect?
Only great stuff, So we are actively working on additional agents and models. In particular, what we want to do is we want to focus more on what we like to call industry-led innovation. So what this means is that we will work with some of our most prestigious customers and try to help them to address their problem in anticipation that their problems will be the problems of the market, and then we will basically take that IP and sell it as models and agents to the rest of the world, if that makes sense. So it's exciting times. We should talk next year again. It will be awesome.
Yeah, for sure. We'll be glad to have you back anytime. Udo, thank you so much for talking to me, and enjoy the rest of the conference.
No, thank you, and thank you for what you're doing.
So we've seen how models and agents come together in real-world decisions. Now, let's step it up a level to the broader platform vision behind all of this. Helping us see this vision is Jared Peterson, Senior Vice President of Global Engineering. Hey, Jared, thanks for coming on to the show.
Hey, Thiago, great to be here, man.
Yeah. Of course. So you were just on main stage earlier,
right.
Talked about a lot of things.
Sure.
A couple of the things you talked about were SAS Data Maker and Retrieval-Augmented Generation.
Right.
Can you tell me what that combination solves for people?
Yeah, so the specific use case we were kind of walking through on stage was the notion of using Data Maker to address what we consider the classic class imbalance problem. So in the case of fraud data, right, like most of my transactions are not fraudulent, so I only have a tiny amount of those. So you can actually use synthetic data generation, create more balanced training data, so you get models that actually perform a little bit better, or a lot better actually, in real world scenarios. And then the notion of RAG was to say, okay, in these cases, specific to fraud, where I'm dealing with fraud data. I got a fraud score from that model. Now I need to come along and actually make a decision actually in an enterprise. And oftentimes making a decision involves things like regulatory compliance, referencing previous maybe case notes, and that's where you get into actually like customer data that sits in a customer's enterprise. And RAG allows you to take those things, learn from it, and incorporate that knowledge into decisions that you're making, so you can kind of give humans back kind of human readable, understandable things that's referencing their own internal enterprise data.
That simplifies things for them.
Yeah.
You also mentioned LLMs only being invoked in gray area cases. Can you break down that distinction, what it means?
Yeah, for sure. So in Brian's main stage content especially, he talked about this notion of determinism versus non-determinism. And I actually think kind of that, thinking about those two things, that spectrum is a great way to think about this gray area and kind of where LLMs come into play. So taking that fraud example again, maybe in 99% of my cases, I'm actually just running through a very deterministic path in a decision tree and intelligent decisioning, for example, of like, okay, business rules are firing, I know what to do most of the time, and I'm just doing that in a very deterministic manner. But then when things come in, it's like, okay, I'm actually outside of those business rules in a way that I need to get a human involved. I'm in that gray area. And that's where you can actually move into non-determinism in a actual helpful way, so that we could use retrieval-augmented generation, we could use that LLM, bring all of that kind of knowledge from previous case notes together to give an analyst an actual kind of understanding about, okay, this is what's happened, you need to make a decision on what to do, here's what we know from what we've done in the past, and then actually let a human make a very intelligent decision based on enterprise knowledge. Yeah.
One thing that came up while you were speaking a lot was governance.
Right.
You mentioned it with RAG, with intelligent decisioning. Is governance a thing that is a differentiator for SAS, or is everybody saying that?
It's absolutely a differentiator for SAS. And it's interesting here at Innovate, as I've just met with customer after customer after customer, the notion of kind of all the things that are just kind of baked in that you just kind of get naturally. Sometimes that, honestly, at SAS, I think we just kind of take for granted that everybody does this, but actually not everybody does this. And so, yeah, with the RAG case, that we were showing on stage, there was this notion when Susan was demoing of actually using kind of, validating the data. All right, are we getting kind of the answers that we would expect? The system is actually updating those collections as data is changing. You even see in things like Model Studio this notion of kind of champion models and challenger models, and like users actually making decisions, deliberate decisions about those things. And all that is being, we're understanding those user decisions. That's all being kind of logged as activities underneath the covers, and all of that is kind of building in kind of this governance, which is what kind of builds the trust that people come to SAS for.
So governance plays a part in multiple different industries, different areas, and you covered a lot of different areas of innovation on stage. Is there one in particular that you're especially excited about in the future? Yeah,
for sure. I mean, one of the things we talked about on stage that maybe isn't what people would kind of think about first when they think about exciting, but for me, it's incredibly exciting, is this notion of kind of like how we've embraced open ecosystems and thinking about things like open file formats, so, whether that's Parquet, whether that's Iceberg, and then that kind of like leveraging or kind of connecting to technologies like DuckDB, where you get this notion of like we can use DuckDB to perform just analytics on those open file formats and realize just these massive performance gains. We can realize incredible savings in storage footprint, and like what I referenced on stage, which is like isn't just kind of marketing speak, is actually like I see this in my inbox as I interact with customers every day. This like, man, okay, this performance gains, this storage footprint improvement is really changing the conversation for customers when they think about a migration from something like SAS 9 to SAS Viya. It's like, okay, this isn't just, I'm not just thinking about this as disruptive and expensive. I'm thinking about like, oh, wow, okay, given like something like the storage footprint improvement, this actually makes financial sense. This is maybe the best idea we've had recently. So I get really excited about those kind of wins for customers. Of course, things like Agentic and Copilot, all that stuff is amazing, but I'm particularly excited about things like open file formats and that kind of stuff. So.
Speaking about Agentic, when building an Agentic architecture, you can do it around MCP servers. Could you talk a little bit about what benefits that brings to users?
Yeah, for sure. back to that notion of openness, and MCP is an open protocol. And so one of the benefits of us leveraging it behind our copilots is that it kind of opens Viya up to integration with other tools. And so if you think about kind of what we're doing in Viya Copilot, I kind of think about it in layers, right? So I've got a copilot. That's really kind of my interaction with the user interface. So that's the interface. Sitting behind those copilots are agents, right? So copilot, request comes into copilot, goes to that agent. Agent decides, okay, am I going to handle that request? Am I going to orchestrate the answer across maybe multiple agents? Those agents, though, in order to perform those actions for users, they are selecting tools out of MCP servers, okay? And they're saying, okay, I need a tool maybe for visualization or decisioning or compute. And they're doing all those things on behalf of the user. But that's all in service of a user's interaction with Viya. But because we kind of terminate those requests into MCP servers in tools out of those MCP servers, now all of a sudden tools like Claude, tools like Teams, ChatGPT, they all already speak MCP. So they, in the same way that we're leveraging MCP, can reach into those MCP servers as well. So it's just a whole new ballgame as far as users being able to get value out of Viya.
Yeah. They all connect together seamlessly.
Exactly, yeah.
A hot topic I've heard around the conference as well is data intelligence.
Yeah.
And data intelligence from SAS, right. SAS Viya specifically, I want to ask you, how does that differ from traditional data management?
Yeah. Well, I mean, I think this is really, when I think about SAS and I think about kind of the breadth of our portfolio that we bring to bear for a customer, that's where I really think you get to that kind of intelligence piece. So, of course, data management is a focus, has been a focus. We have incredible capabilities when it comes to data management. But when you think about getting to data intelligence, you think about like, okay, now that I have data, how do I take that data and actually get insights from it? Maybe in something like visual analytics. How do I take that data and actually build incredible, reliable models from it in something like Model Studio? How do I take that data, go from insights, modeling, and actually managing those models or deploying those models through intelligent decisioning? And so that's really that intelligent piece, is when I can actually go from data, using data management tools, to actually delivering insight into the organization. That's the intelligence. And I really think we've got a lot of amazing, unique capability to go from kind of one end to the other. Yeah.
From data to insights to decisions ultimately at the end.
Exactly. Yeah,
awesome.
Perfect.
Jared, thank you so much for coming on to the show. I really appreciate it.
Thiago, great to be here. Thanks for doing this, man. Yeah.
One key takeaway that I got from talking to Jared is that our platform depends on trusted AI-ready data. To get a better idea about the foundation of data intelligence, we'll catch up with Ron Agresta, Senior Director of Product Management. Hey, Ron, thanks for coming on to the show.
Great to be here.
Awesome, let's get right into it. So Jared spoke about data intelligence and the importance of turning data into decisions. What are the core capabilities that make up data intelligence, and what value does this bring to users?
Yeah, so data is really important for our customers' AI journeys. And from a data intelligence perspective, we're talking about things like data governance, data integration, the standards around data, the way that people manage their data, access data, and ultimately get it into the form that ends up driving their AI solutions, driving their intelligent decisioning solutions as well. So it's really the foundation of a lot of what SAS does.
So we broke down what it is. My next question is, how does data intelligence connect directly to SAS Viya, and what parts of the platform does it bring together?
Yep, so if you're familiar with SAS Viya, we've got capabilities like SAS Studio that allows you to program and build data pipelines. We have intelligent decisioning that's also another part of what we do in data management. We've got our information catalog that allows you to help govern and find your data and lineage and things like that. We have a big selection of access engines to connect to all kinds of different data. So from really top to bottom, we can take your data in, transform it, join it, integrate it, and then cleanse it and make it available to whatever downstream thing you want to do, whether that's build an AI model or build an intelligent decisioning flow with some data pieces in there. It's really the foundation of a lot of SAS's power of SAS Viya.
So you mentioned some tools there just now that are new to me. I understand that these tools were recently renamed. Why is that important, and why should users understand this change?
Yeah, so I was using some of the old names there, and I'll transition to the new ones now. So part of what we're doing there is this refresh of our data story, a more unified approach, and so the names are changing. The technology is evolving like technology does, but this doesn't mean there's an impact to the customer's deployments or anything like that. It's mostly a branding refresh, and so SAS Studio becomes SAS Data and AI Studio. There's a Data Explorer component that becomes SAS Data Hub. We've got our information governance solution that becomes data governance, and missing one. Data acceleration. So we had in-database technologies, and so that is our data accelerator that encompasses all of that technology, now all in one place instead of individual products.
Perfect. Gotta love a brand refresh every now and then. If people want to learn more about data intelligence and see what's coming in the future, what do you recommend checking out?
Yeah, so if you go to the SAS website, you can go to sas.com/data, and that's a good place and gives you the overview. There's also SAS communities that are data management dedicated. If you're around SAS Innovate, there's all kinds of data management booths and things like that, and then all the assets that end up getting created of the videos and the presentations that went on here will be available online after today. So it's all kinds of different things that people can use to get up to speed on what's happening in data management.
Perfect. Yeah, we'll check those out. Ron, thanks again so much for coming on to the show.
Sure, no problem. Thanks.
So with trusted data in place, the next question becomes, how can organizations take that data and turn it into decisions? Deanna Maris, Senior Product Manager, can help us answer that. Hi, Deanna. Welcome back to the show.
Hey, Thiago. It's so good to see you, especially in this setting at Innovate.
Yeah, I love Texas 2026. Let's get right into it. We're clearly moving past the experimental phase of generative AI. How does SAS's agentic strategy help leaders move from AI hype to real ROI in 2026?
Oh yeah, so I think we all experiment with agents in a personal way, and that is easy, but really to translate agents into an enterprise asset, we have to think of the enterprise foundation that we have to provide agents, and that shows up in the way you operate with agents, whether that's orchestration or a deployment of agents. It also shows up in how you secure your data or the entire system, and how you specify governance elements like traceability and human-in-the-loop controls and guardrails. And ultimately, control also comes from flexibility. So with Viya, we enable users to bring their own LLM and also bring their own enterprise knowledge. And we don't just retrieve this enterprise knowledge, we actually embed it in our secure decisioning systems. But then the magic really happens with making these all capabilities across the Viya analytics lifecycle available in a library of robust analytics tools that become available for either our Viya Copilot or external agents that are built by our customers.
So you had mentioned decisioning. SAS has been a leader in decisioning for decades. How do AI agents change high-stake decisions compared to more traditional automation?
Yeah, so SAS has been around and it has excelled in the automation processes over decades. And what that looked like so far has been a more prescribed workflow. But what agents bring into the play is adaptability. So they can understand a complex environment around them and have to adapt to make decisions within that environment. In that case, we have to be much more prescriptive or thoughtful about what type of tools we make available to agents. And really, it's also about, in a regular system, you still have to trust what type of tools the human employs. And in this case, it just translates into agents. You have to trust the tools that the agent leverages in that system. So that is a change, but really we have, we've used methods for automation like machine learning and traditional AI for years, and even in those cases, the human still controls what the ultimate outcome is of a process. So we can't say, especially in an enterprise system with high stakes and high that needs to be very reliant, we can't say, well, the agent did it. So we have to have those governance harnesses very well specified there.
Can you give us an example of a quick win using all this? Where is value showing up the fastest?
Yeah, we see our customers adopt this in fast-paced environments where your outcomes are already very clearly identified and measurable. So we see it in financial services and financial crime, where an agent can retrieve the signals and adapt the models quickly to the issues at hand, and then prescribe things for you in a very fast manner. We also see it in marketing, for example. We have our dedicated agents for marketing where you can embed your workflows, your existing workflows, so you don't have to reinvent everything. Just reuse what's already working well for you, like a marketing campaign workflow, and help the agent identify what it means for that process to work well for you. As well as in retrieval-augmented generation, where you want to leverage the enterprise knowledge you have at hand. So you don't have to reinvent everything to get started. Leverage what you already have, and especially in those use cases where it's clearly defined what the outcome should be.
Talking about agents, for some people, agents are starting to feel like digital coworkers. How can leaders prepare their teams for the shift?
Yeah, absolutely. I think it's not just the technology shift that we've already kind of gotten used to that, but it's also an operational shift. So someone who was used to working on the implementation side, now they become the actual controller and maybe reviewer of the agent's action. So they have to prepare their employees to be able to design these systems and tell them how they want to work, as well as being able to evaluate the outputs of the system. And some other important items would be maybe leveraging their knowledge in building prompts for the system. So they already know what the processes should be. They should be able to effectively translate them into effective prompts.
Gotcha, that's some good tips. If people wanted to learn more about our Agentic AI strategy and intelligent decisioning, what would you recommend?
Yeah, I mean, there's a wealth of information that's being shared here at SAS Innovate, and a lot of our sessions are being recorded. So I do recommend that everyone goes and asks for those on demand. We have everything from retrieval-augmented generation to building agents to ready-built agents that are more industry specialized, as well as our AI Navigator that enhances the use of our governance across multiple use cases. So I definitely would say go check out those roadmap sessions and go on our website and just try to find the courses that are already available there.
Perfect. Lots of stuff to dig into. DeLonay, thank you so much for coming back onto the show.
It was so good to see you. So good to talk to you about this topic. Very important today.
When it comes to decisioning, that interaction layer is key. Let's dive deeper on how users experience agentic systems using SAS Viya Copilot with Ben Tomlinson, Principal Software Developer. Hi, Ben. Thanks for coming on to the show.
Hey, thanks for having me. I'm glad to be here.
Of course. So we're talking about SAS Viya Copilot and agentic workflows. Can you tell me what that all means and how they connect to each other?
Yeah, of course. So SAS Viya Copilot released last year, and it's our natural language interface to Viya. And it's available across all sorts of different products within Viya. And we're rolling out different features all the time, whether that's building models and pipelines in Model Studio, or building reports and dashboards within Visual Analytics. And the next step that we're taking with Viya Copilot is adding into it agentic capabilities, specifically the ability for the Copilot to interact with agents that are running inside of Viya.
So what are the advantages of running agents using Copilot like this?
Right, so what it allows us to do is actually give the user the ability to do higher level things. So larger goal-based things or task-based processes where we allow Viya Copilot to actually do the orchestration between the different agents that exist. And so that allows users to really approach problems that are much larger than we currently support, and allow the agent to kind of break down that problem into pieces that it can then work through.
Awesome. Can you provide like an end-to-end example of this workflow for us?
Right, of course. So let's talk about the analytics lifecycle. And so a user would come into SAS Data and AI Studio and use Copilot in there to interact with an agent that helps it build flows and actually write code for their specific data. And then you would move out of that and maybe go into visual analytics. And you'd have an agent in there where you could actually build your reports and dashboards and things using that same data. And then you'd flow into Model Studio. And within Model Studio, Viya Copilot would allow you to interact with agents that do pipeline building, pipeline tuning, things like that. And then finally, you would take your model out of Model Studio and move it into Model Manager. And within Model Manager, you'd have another agent there that allow you to understand how your model is performing and watch it over time. And so you get kind of a full end-to-end flow just by using SAS Viya Copilot and the agents underneath.
Awesome. Covers the whole analytics lifecycle.
Yeah,
if users wanted to use these capabilities outside of SAS Viya, is that possible? How would they do that?
Right, yeah, it is. So one of the technologies we're using to build these agents is actually called MCP, or Model Context Protocol. And so we're creating servers and tools using MCP. And what users can do is they can take these tools and actually plug them into their own agentic workflows. And so we understand that while having these capabilities within Viya is great, there might be some agentic workflows where customers would like to just pull out bits and pieces of functionality from Viya and actually put it into their workflows. So that's what MCP really gives them.
Awesome. If people wanted to learn more about MCP, SAS Viya Copilot, agentic workflows, where would you point them to?
We got a lot of great resources out on SAS.com. There's actually a Viya Copilot space that they can go look at. A couple of different things you see there. You see the different uses of Viya Copilot across the entire portfolio. You can see the different personas that would benefit from actually using Viya Copilot. We also have some resources that help people understand kind of the steps that you go into turning it on and getting it approved for their actual Viya instance.
Awesome. Ben, that's all the questions I have for you. Thanks for coming on to the show again.
Thanks for having me. Really appreciate it.
As AI becomes more prominent across organizations, one question keeps popping up. Can we trust the outputs? Breaking down LLM evaluation for us is Mary Osborne, Senior Product Manager of Natural Language Processing. Hi, Mary. Welcome back to the show.
Thanks, Thiago. I appreciate it.
So let's get right into it. We're talking today about LLM evaluation and NLP algorithms. Can you tell me what we mean when we're talking about all this?
Sure. NLP is a subfield of AI that involves working with unstructured data like text. LLMs are something that's sort of blown up my little tiny niche domain and has turned it into something that has become prevalent in the foundational pieces of most of what we do in AI today. The challenge becomes, how do we know the LLMs are actually behaving appropriately? And right now in the market, it's an area that people are exploring and working on, and it's something that's become near and dear to my heart. It's a bit of a soapbox item, so I'm happy to talk to you about it today.
So how is SAS Viya's approach to LLM evaluation different from the more common approaches?
Sure. Right now in the market, one of the easiest approaches that people choose is to use an LLM to evaluate LLM output. To me, that's kind of like snake eating its own tail kind of thing. It's an expensive approach, and you end up with one non-deterministic method that could hallucinate, telling you how well the next non-deterministic method that can hallucinate is doing. We feel like there are more sound approaches that are rooted in metrics, and we look at everything that happens in an LLM from the inputs as prompts, it's text, the outputs that the model creates, the responses are text. So it's an NLP problem, and we're experts in NLP. We've been doing this for over 20 years. So we have really interesting approaches to analyzing this type of data and helping organizations understand how well the models are actually performing.
This isn't our first rodeo when it comes to NLP. So for LLM evaluation, is it industry specific, or can anyone benefit from it?
Anyone can benefit from it. It's, like I said, it's basically just a text problem. So it doesn't matter if you're dealing with bot data from financial services or healthcare. We just care about the inputs and the outputs. And what we end up doing with those is we look at things like consistency. So LLMs, as I mentioned, are non-deterministic, which means they're rooted in probability, and the answers that you get can be variable. If you ask a model the same question 5 or 6 times, you may get 5 or 6 different responses. And it's important to understand how often that's occurring. So if you're trying to roll a bot out to your organization, one of the biggest challenges you have is you've got users that are asking those same questions over and over again, and if they're getting wildly different responses, that's not a great thing, and it can cause users to to grow less confident in your applications and then not use them. And people are investing a lot of money in these types of applications. Some of the other things that we worry about is how faithful is the response to the prompt? So how closely aligned is the response to what the user is asking? Is it meandering off topic? It's important to know because tokens cost a lot of money. So if you're ending up with responses that are super long and lengthy, it can be expensive, and it also, again, decreases user confidence. One of my favorite evaluation metrics, though, is response comprehensiveness. So what that means is if you ask a model a 5-part question, how closely aligned is the response to each part of that question? How comprehensively is the model responding? And what we find is models are very much like humans, where if you ask a multi-part question, humans are really good at remembering the first part because it's the first thing they hear, and the last part, but the middle gets muddy, and LLMs do the same thing. People have gotten to the point where they communicate with their bots like they're people, and they put all this information into prompts, and they're not very targeted. So if you have a bunch of information that you care about in the middle of all of that text, the model's probably going to either ignore it or latch onto it in ways that you don't anticipate. So it's really important to understand if you have questions that your users are asking and they fall in a very specific format that includes a bunch of different things, it's important to understand that because you may need to think about doing your models differently. You may have to think about which model is going to be more likely to approach those multiple section prompts most appropriately.
Yeah, it's super important for the responses to be consistent, comprehensive, and faithful, amongst other things. Mary, thank you so much for coming on the show and talking to me about this.
My pleasure. I've really enjoyed it.
Trust in AI doesn't just stop at model evaluation. It also requires organizational visibility and accountability. My co-host, Brianna Ullman, will get the word on SAS AI Navigator from Allie DeLonay, Senior Data Scientist.
Thank you so much for joining us, Allie. We just heard today on the main stage during opening session about SAS AI Navigator, but for those who may have missed it, what is SAS AI Navigator and really who is it for?
Yeah, so thanks for having me. So SAS AI Navigator is really meant to be the product that you use to manage all of the AI at your organization. And when I say all of the AI, I do actually mean all of the AI. So that means it's not just going to be SAS models. It's going to be every single model that you could ever possibly use at your organization. It's going to be Claude. It's going to be LLMs. It's going to be the small model that your organization also created. And so the idea is that it's also going to be very lightweight. So it's completely separate from SAS Viya. You don't even have needed to know about SAS to be able to use SAS Navigator. And it's going to be available as a software as a service this summer.
That's really exciting, and I love what you said about models being part of what is being governed here in SAS AI Navigator. I want to make sure I heard you right. That's models that are homegrown, that are in a SAS environment, or that are procured by a third-party vendor. Is that correct?
Exactly, yes. So it's any kind of model, also any kind of agent. So the idea is that, yes, we're managing our agents and our models, but really the primary thing that we care most about in AI Navigator is the use case. And so the use case is the actual business implementation of a model or an agent, because without that business context, then it starts to become much more difficult to govern a particular model, because one model could be used in two extremely different ways, and one of those uses could be extremely high risk, and the other could be pretty low risk.
Well, that makes sense. And I think what you're describing here might even be my next question, which is, what are the challenges that SAS AI Navigator is helping to solve?
Yeah, so especially thinking about large language models, so many organizations are trying to become more productive and think about ways that they can use this awesome technology, which also means there could be dozens of different ways that you're using a single model. So what AI Navigator does is it centralizes all of that, and if you do have, say, 10 separate use cases that use a large language model, you can connect those use cases directly to that model, and you're not completely redoing all of that work that you did for the large language model every single time it has to be used. So not only that, but because I was saying before that a use case is really where the governance happens, that is where we apply our policies as well. And so it gives you a single place to make sure that you've considered any regulations that need to apply, any policies that need to apply to the level of the use case. And then you can really work with all of the appropriate stakeholders at your organization to make sure that you've classified that use case appropriately for the policies that have been applied to those use cases.
Excellent. And you're talking about policies, and I'm really curious, at that higher level, we're hearing so much today about a changing regulatory environment, whether it's the EU AI Act or others. So how does this work with policies within SAS AI Navigator help organizations meet this complicated moment?
Yeah, that's a really great question. So with a regulation like, say, the EU AI Act, if you have ever looked at the regulation text for it, it is daunting, it is large. And not only that, a single paragraph in the EU AI Act, you could probably have 2 lawyers that interpret the meaning of that completely differently. So because of that, what a policy does is it actually operationalizes all of that regulation text into easy to understand questions that can then be applied to your use cases. And then it's so much easier to make sure that you're ready for when your legal team comes by to make sure that you are in fact complying with the EU AI Act and or other regulations.
That makes a lot of sense to me, and I'm hearing a lot about legal folks. And Allie, I know that you were trained as a data scientist. You're not in legal. So why would you or a data scientist be using SAS AI Navigator?
So I'm always trying to figure out how I can use AI to either make myself more productive or make my team more productive. And so one way that I could use it is I go to AI Navigator and I look at the asset inventory and I do a quick search to see what models are already being used, what use cases have already been approved, and if it turns out that the use case I had in mind, well gosh, a different department at SAS is already using that model or already implemented that use case, now I can just connect with that team and I'm not having to redo all of that work. So now it's a matter of reusability and I'm more productive, and not to mention it's a lot more streamlined because I'm able to work with different teams across my organization and we're starting to share resources.
I could see how that could really help connect different departments, make sure that these organizations, teams are talking to each other who maybe do very different things, but AI is now affecting all of them. And I have one final question for you, which I think people are going to be really eager to hear, which is how can you get your hands on this product?
Yes, so this summer we're actually going to be doing a private preview. So in the weeks following SAS Innovate, we are going to start a private preview where customers can express interest in participating. And the goal is to really get it in front of our customers. And we want to make sure that this product that we've developed fits their needs. And if it doesn't, we want to get that feedback. And we really want to make sure that it's solid and ready to go for our GA release in summer of 2026.
Excellent. Really looking forward to that release date. And for any customers who are part of the private preview, I know that you are going to be taking their feedback to heart and adopting it into that version that we see this summer. Excellent. Thank you for being here.
Of course. Thanks, Brianna. Thanks for having me.
We've covered where AI is today from various perspectives, but now let's hear what's coming in the future of quantum AI. I'll pass things over to my co-host, Cameron Massey, for her interview with Amy Stout, Head of Quantum Product Strategy.
Hey Amy, welcome back to the show. Last year we spoke with you at SAS Innovate. Could you give us some of the latest updates in quantum AI?
Absolutely, Karen. Great to see you. It's been a really exciting year since we spoke at last year's Innovate. So in quantum AI, there's been a number of advancements actually from some of our hardware partner vendors that we're working with. And even more exciting to me is on the software side. We've had a number of advancements at SAS for quantum AI and what we're doing with customers and what we're building for customers.
Yeah, this is really exciting. I'd love to learn a little bit more about how SAS is using or testing quantum AI. Could you share a few examples?
Definitely. So to me, one of the most exciting things is how our SAS quantum experts are working directly with customers across industries on some real world use cases. So for example, in the finance space, some of our team is working with banking customers on things like fraud detection or bankruptcy prediction modeling. And the best part about all of this is they are doing that in SAS Viya, and they're starting to use some of our new quantum AI tools like the SAS Quantum Lab that comes out later this year.
Cool. And for anyone who isn't familiar, what is the SAS Quantum Lab?
Absolutely. The SAS Quantum Lab, it's a practical launchpad for organizations to start and scale their quantum AI journey. So it allows users to talk with our virtual quantum AI tutor and say, hey, I'm new to quantum, how do I get started? And then once they start getting the hang of it, say, can you suggest me some next steps or some sample code for my specific business problem? We also allow you to compare classical, quantum, and hybrid models so that you can really see where the value of quantum AI will be and where you might want to stick with your classical resources. And finally, what's really exciting about the Quantum Lab in SAS Viya is that we provide incredible performance enhancing capabilities that give up to 100 times speed up and up to 99% cost savings when looking at other tools out in the market for quantum AI exploration.
Wow. So if someone is interested in giving this a try, how do they get started?
Yes, if you're interested in trying the SAS Quantum Lab, keep an eye out in Q4 2026 when it will be available for SAS Viya for customers.
Okay, great. Well, thank you so much. I've enjoyed speaking with you today.
Great to see you, Cameron. Thank you.
SAS Innovate's message is clear. The future of AI isn't fragmented tools or uncontrolled experimentation. It's trusted data, governed intelligence, and agentic systems working together under one unified platform, where the human is in the loop. This brings us to the end of a special episode of the SAS Viya Release Highlight Show, but SAS Innovate doesn't have to end here. There are plenty of sessions available on demand right now at sas.com/innovate. While you're here, why not give us a like, comment on what you thought about the conference, subscribe to the SAS Users YouTube channel, and click on that bell to get notified for new content. I've been your data cowboy, Thiago de Souza. Thank you all for watching, and I'll see you next time.